Good morning, Leslie. The schedule worked out, and be able to take your comments. And so for items not on the agenda, we typically allow 5 minutes. So I'll set the clock at 5 minutes, and I know that you've been able to talk with some members of the board and want to put some information out on the record today. And so with that, if you'll just introduce yourself, and then I'll let you make your comments.
Wonderful. Thank you. Pleasant surprise to be called so early. Good morning.
Not always this way, I can assure you. So.
Well, I'll take it. Good morning. I'm Leslie Heimov, the Executive Director of the Children's Law Center of California. We are a nonprofit legal services organization that, through a contract with the Judicial Council, provides representation to all of the children involved in the foster care system here in Sacramento County. I did provide you with a statement of the problem. I don't know if you've received it yet. We tried to do a short one-pager.
It was just handed out, so you can summarize it if you'd like.
So that it would be succinct for you. Often, on a daily basis, there are children who are in the foster care system but who don't have an appropriate placement. Sometimes they are new to the system and there just are no available foster homes. Other times they're children that have been in the system for quite some time and their current situation is not working out either because the child is unhappy in the placement or because the caregiver is unwilling or unable to care for them on an ongoing basis. Oftentimes these are our most challenging children and children with the highest needs. They may have mental health issues, they may have been victims of trafficking, they may have been involved in very dysfunctional, problematic relationships. They find themselves at CPSU, which was initially intended to be a unit that would meet with the child and then work to find an immediate placement for them. What has happened because of a variety of system challenges is these kids are spending anywhere from a few hours to several days, and in the most extreme cases, several weeks, waiting in the lobby of the receiving home, literally a lobby that is similar to your dentist's office or your doctor's office. The staff that are assigned to oversee these children are on the other side of a glass window. They don't interact with them except to let them know when they need to go to the restroom and perhaps bring them a meal. They roll out mats or cots at night for them to sleep on. And what ends up happening, not surprisingly, is these kids who are already anxious, agitated, have a lot of needs, become more anxious and more agitated. And they may sometimes try to hurt themselves. Other times, if there's more than one child there, they will get into it with each other. Something will set one off. These are kids who, with a history of abuse, are very easily triggered. And then fights erupt. And children get hurt, or children get arrested, or are sent to mental health facilities because they are decompensating. None of these things should be happening to kids who are coming to us and saying, I need some immediate help. We totally acknowledge and appreciate that CPS has a huge challenge in meeting these kids' needs, and they are not always easy to serve. But nonetheless, we feel that this problem has been going on for almost 2 years now, that it's really crescendoed, and it has been a constant state of crisis for, I would say, close to 2 years. CPS is well aware of the problem. We have meetings, we discuss, we all seem to agree on the solutions or possible solutions. But then something happens that we're not privy to as the advocates, where plans are not able to be fully enacted, and kids are suffering. We've had children hospitalized because they were beat up. We've had children hospitalized because they were going to hurt themselves. Kids have ended up arrested, and then they enter the juvenile justice system at greater burden to the county, and certainly not a way that we want to serve children who come to us as victims, and then they suddenly become defendants because their situation is one that they personally can't manage, and the adults that are supposed to help them manage it are not able to do so due to a lack of resources, a lack of appropriate facilities, and a lack of immediate crisis intervention and clinical services that can and should be made available to these children.
Leslie, can I just ask you just on that for a minute, and this is not coming out of your time. So you said that in some extreme circumstances, children have spent weeks in the lobby.
That's correct.
Is there a specific example of that? It seems to me that under any circumstance, spending weeks in the lobby awaiting, assuming that they're eligible for services, and I trust that they are, it's kind of making that connection, but that really caught my attention. So I guess if you want to maybe just take a moment to elaborate on, and again, that may be the extreme, and so we're talking about what happens maybe on a regular basis as it relates to hours or days, and days is too long, but weeks, that just seems very
So the counties, the data that was provided to us from the county indicates that in January, the longest overstay was 31 days.
31 days in the lobby?
Yes. In February, the longest overstay was 96 hours. March, it was 338 hours, 208. So the weeks is unusual, and there have been others. The other thing that happens is kids will come and go. So they may be there for 3 days, they leave for a day, or they leave for 6 hours, and then they're back for 4 days. That doesn't get counted as 7 days, even though it really is in terms of the child's life. If they're gone for 6 hours, but are there a total of 7 days, they were there for a week. So the one situation, and it's interesting because some of the longest ones, one in particular that we heard about just a week ago or so, is a young boy, approximately 8 years old. They just couldn't find a foster home. He didn't have any particular terrible challenges. He was going to his home school every day, but coming back to CPSU at night.
It's 8 years old?
Yes.
He was going to his home school every day and coming. How was he getting back?
Social worker would transport, I believe. That's my assumption.
Yeah, okay.
And that was just they couldn't find a foster home, and he's too young for a group home. And so there is a very real shortage of foster homes, and we don't minimize that. But without an appropriate shelter-type facility, this is what we're left with, is kids who are sleeping in a lobby and have to be taken to a place where a shower is in the receiving home to shower. They may or may not be eating their meals with other kids. They may be sitting on a chair with a sandwich. So it can be very dire. The more common situation...
I'll answer your question. So you're still responding to the question. That's why I put the timer off. So,
okay, thank you.
I want to let you finish your talk, but you were responding to the question. So
the more common situation are teenagers who have challenges with being placed. As you know, the receiving home and CPSU are right on Auburn Boulevard, right across from the track, where a lot of sexual exploitation takes place, so the children are easily enticed away. We've also had situations where people will come from the track and try to get girls that are at CPSU to be out on the street with them. One girl was beat up because she refused to go. So it's a situation that takes on a lot of different forms, but again is very dire. So
okay.
I was mostly done, and would be happy.
Oh no, I wasn't trying to cut you off. I just, again, kind of give the question. But you also specify some things you'd like as far as action. So I'll let you summarize with those.
So in terms of immediate action, I think the two most important things that we think are the easiest to implement are hiring and staffing trained clinicians that would be available 24/7. And we recognize that this person may end up with nothing to do for a part of their day, which is why they may have to have other job responsibilities. But the current system, whereby if a child becomes agitated or if a fight has happened, then an emergency clinician is called in, doesn't work, and we wait for the problem rather than being proactive and having someone available who can help these kids to settle down and start to talk to them about what's really going on in their life and actually make a plan with them that might work. Instead, we wait until there's a problem, make the emergency phone call, and the response could be anywhere from 45 minutes to several hours, and by then it's too late and law enforcement is called in. So there needs to be clinical staff on site 24/7 available to these children. In addition, the staff who are there just to provide general oversight need to be trained in trauma-informed practices and need to have their job description changed so that rather than... I'm so sorry, I'm breaking your microphone.
Okay.
Rather than sitting on the other side of a glass window, that they're actually interacting with these children and starting to form relationships with them and build some trust so that we can find out what's really happening with them and meet their needs better. The third thing that we've identified is we don't think any child should wait in the lobby for more than 30 minutes. If it's really just a waiting for, which is what lobbies are for 30 minutes or so. I mean, any of us after 30 minutes waiting for an appointment, we're pretty restless, right? And in order to achieve that, the county's going to have to fund additional shelter beds that can be held empty, waiting for these kids to come in so that there is a bed in an appropriate, habitable place for them to be, a place that is designed for sleeping, not a place that is makeshift for sleeping. and for other self-care and whatnot. And lastly, there was an effort about a year ago. The department, CPS, held a community meeting. It was very well attended. There were 50 or so organizations that showed up, both county and private organizations, and there was a lot of enthusiasm for things that county partners could do to ease the burden on the CPS staff and to make the time that the children spend waiting more productive and more useful. There was a little bit, there was an initial interest and effort, and it fell by the way. And I think it fell by the way because it wasn't anybody's job to keep it going. It was more just hopefully everybody will show up, and then when that's, people lost enthusiasm, it didn't happen. So those are the short-term solutions. Long-term, we recommend that the assessment center be moved to a location that is better suited for foster youth. And that the county look into creating an emergency shelter similar perhaps to what's done in Orange County or Los Angeles County, which are two very different models, but both seem to be fairly effective. And lastly, increased utilization of multi-systemic treatment foster care.
Okay. Well, thank you, Leslie, for certainly being here this morning, and I know you have folks that are with you, and certainly for your advocacy on behalf of children and for your comments. We have other comments from the board. As you know, we can't take any action today, but we may ask for some direction to be given. So, Supervisor Kennedy, you had...
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think that these concerns are, obviously very serious, and I think it warrants probably agendizing having the receiving home on the agenda to address these concerns, and also just to give kind of an overview of the current state of the conditions at the receiving home.
Okay.
Can I just clarify? There's the receiving home and CPSU, they're at the same physical space, but it's really CPSU that is responsible for this.
I meant kind of an overall
Gotcha.
overarching issue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I would just offer, too, I think with the CPSU, obviously this is something that we've known about for some time. It may not be easily addressed, but to my question earlier, and I did have a chance yesterday to meet with Brenda, and Leslie was on the phone, it seems to me that when people come to us for help and are in a relatively safe place, and then because of their own circumstances, and young people may or may not have some responsibility for the situations, but nonetheless, they're minors, they show up, they present themselves, and to, just the wait itself can be very taxing, and I would imagine that some of these young people aren't very trusting of the establishment, so to speak, but they presented themselves, and to come to a safe harbor and then find out that, one, we're not capable of certainly helping them in a timely fashion, but then secondly, that things can accelerate, and then they end up in the juvenile justice system in addition to seeking out help. That to me is a poor expenditure of dollars, and secondly, I don't think that's what was intended here, unless there were some other circumstances that would warrant that. But so again, without knowing the full extent, we sort of can't take action here today. But I do think I would concur with Supervisor Kennedy that we ought to agendize this. Apparently, there was an assessment was done. We're aware of it. I know that in my briefing, I had just met with these folks, and you're aware of it as well. So what sort of funding strategy, what sort of strategy that would allow us to make some at least initial forays into helping to reduce not only the waste but also have better outcomes and better response to folks who are obviously being exploited in some cases. Some are running away from other issues, but they're ending up in our in a place that was supposed to be there for intake and for placement and so forth, and is not obviously not functioning at capacity because of some of the difficulties that just the numbers, lack of foster homes, and so forth. So I think this was appropriate to agendize, have a fuller discussion around this, and obviously some assessment by our administration and our staff. So we'll look to do that. So any other comments by supervisors at this juncture? So Leslie, well, thank you for being here. Thank you for the folks that are with you for presenting. We will. I guess I would say there's some urgency to this as well. I think that this probably goes on every day. We're talking about 100 kids a month that present themselves into this type of situation on average. So So I don't know, maybe we can do something in the next few weeks to actually have a discussion about this, and maybe even it's a budget discussion, I don't know. So we got final budget coming up, and there's a lot of priorities that are competing there, but nonetheless, this is an important one. So,
Well, we appreciate your time and are happy to participate and be helpful in any way that we can. Thank
okay,
you.
very good. Thank you, Leslie. Okay, with that then, we'll just receive the information today, and we'll be working to have this come back to the board. So with that, we've got about 10 minutes